Hello and welcome to this edition of the Sarnia Cinema Podcast. We're operating with slightly reduced numbers this evening. Claire's been called away to the land of music. Boo indeed. What good ever came from music? And so tonight it's just me, Russ Kellaway, with my colleague Winter Tyson.
Hello.
And we're going to be looking at three films this evening. We're going to start off with looking at The Hunger Games Catching Fire, then moving on to the Nicholas Winding Refn's recent attempt with Only God Forgives, and then we're going to be looking at the recent Blu-ray release of Wolverine. So we're going to start with Hunger Games Catching Fire. Winter, you think I couldn't get to see this one, unfortunately, but you've been along.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Went along to see it. Well, I mean, the first film, obviously, off the back of the quite popular trilogy of books.
Just a bit.
First film was one of those films, very good, but you did sit there thinking, I wonder if I'd be enjoying this as much if I hadn't read the book.
Mm-hmm.
The second film, strangely, because after the first book, things really tail off in the enjoyment department with those books, even though they are good and worth reading. The second film's better than the first film. It's a more solid film. I think if it's not something you've read, you'll get more insight into the world from it. You'll go, okay, that's fine. I mean, it's one of those films. It's kind of, I suppose, teen sci-fi.
Yeah,
is what it is.
Which we've had quite a lot of recently.
Yeah. But I mean, as opposed to, in the first film, you had the problem of children killing children.
Yeah. If
you know what happens in the second book, that problem's moved aside.
Yeah.
And so the film's punchier. It's a tougher film because they felt we're able to be stronger in what we show. We're able to be stronger with what's going on in the whole film. Like I said, it's a bet. The way I always talk about the books is that the first book of the Hunger Games is a better book than the film's a film.
Right.
If you see what I mean. In this respect, this film is a much better film than the book is a book. So if you're a bit disappointed by the second book but still quite like the story, I think you'll really enjoy this. One of the really good things they do is they cut away a lot of fat. I mean, it's still like almost 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
But they do cut away a lot of stuff. If you've read the books, you don't get the Haymitch backstory. You don't get Twix and Biscuit, the two people they meet in the woods. They're not their names, but you get none of that kind of stuff. There is about, I'd say, 10 minutes, maybe quarter of an hour at the start, where essentially Katniss has a chat with Gale, her cousin or friend from the district.
Just friend. It's allowed.
She then walks into a room, sits down and has a chat with President Snow, and they might as well hold up cards and say,
this happened last time. Previously on the Hunger Games.
And this film will be about, and you sit there for about 10 minutes thinking, oh, this is going to be dreadful.
Yeah, okay.
I've got another 2 hours, 20 minutes of this. And then they go on the victory tour.
Yep.
And then something happens right near the start of the victory tour, and if you've read the books, you'll know what that is. Mm-hmm. And the film just kicks into gear.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't race off the blocks or anything, but it suddenly becomes a solid film. It suddenly becomes a lot more visual in its storytelling. There's a lot of very good sequences with things like the whipping post. Again, if you've seen if you've read the book, you'll know what that's about. And the new peacekeepers, the way the districts have changed slightly. So a lot of that stuff really gets over that idea of, this sort of the real totalitarianism, which was kind of missing from the first film if you haven't read the book.
Well, see, that's what's funny, because I remember, I think this, almost back when we started doing these podcasts, when we did 24 Lives Per Second, the Hunger Games first came out, to the fore, and it was me, you and Peter who were talking about it, and I hadn't read the books, I'd known nothing about it, and you guys had both kind of, followed it and kind of knew where it was coming from. And you were talking about how great the books were and all this. And I said, I'd seen the film and enjoyed it. And it's funny, I've since seen it again since reading the books, and I enjoyed the film a lot more, kind of because of that. And it's interesting because I'm looking forward to seeing this one more because of the books, like you said. And I think that if you'd only seen that first film, all that stuff about the uprising and, let's say, that much more almost like Star Wars-y kind of stuff, where there's an empire and a rebellion, and it was all only alluded to in those final couple of scenes in the first one, in just the Hunger Games. So obviously that obviously does kind of kick off and kind of follows through this one.
And there's much more a feeling that there is a kind of a boot on the back of all their necks in this film. Mm-hmm. You get this idea of the Capitol more as a kind of a fascist force, rather than in the first film you had this, it was kind of like a dystopian almost kind of the problem with the capital in the first one was it was kind of like this is what too much consumption is like. This is too much decadence and so on and so forth. Whereas in this one, that stuff's still there, but they've really toughened it up a bit. They've really let, because of course what they're having to do now is lay out sort of the political groundwork for the next couple of films. And, like Donald Sutherland is a bit kind of there's more of him, and so there's that bit more menace of him. There's more troops. There's more hardware. You see the backs of stadiums more so. I don't know if you've ever been somewhere like Twickenham.
Yeah.
And it's lovely, and then you go into the back and it's like you're stood in concrete pillars.
Yeah,
there's a lot more of that kind of imagery. So you like, and it's just the concrete behind the glitz. And Stanley Tucci comes back as Caesar Flickerman, and he's just kind of he's more like a mental patient in this one. That's kind of amped up, but to a kind of almost an odd, kind of creepy, kind of creepy degree. And of course, because of what happens in the story, you see the cracks appearing in that, and you see kind of that whole TV thing is much more kind of intertwined with the sort of the rotten
core
political situation of the capital. And as well, you see more of the districts. You get a bit more of an idea, because it's winter time now, so you get a bit more of an idea of just how horrible it is in the districts, and kind of the comparison when you get say the makeup crew arrive in the Victor's village. And so even the Victor's village, it doesn't look like kind of backwater Kentucky anymore. It now looks like Serbia.
Okay.
And I suppose
so
that's
because like I say before,
the tone of the
dirty.
whole film. It just looks like
it's more war zone almost.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And as well, I mean, they've got rid of a lot of stuff like the backstory of District 13. Not as much time spent on any of that. That's just something that's mentioned, and then what's that about? And because this stuff isn't being over-explained in the film, you do think it makes the whole thing more intriguing. When it actually gets to the Hunger Games themselves, because obviously they've got to get them back into that arena. It's much more the contestants, the Tribune, versus the arena.
Yes.
Then versus each other, which again was in the book, and even having read the book, I was sat there because they've gutted out so much of kind of the side story, which is mildly interesting.
Yeah.
You do sit there. I was sat there thinking, I can't remember which book X or whatever happened in. I can't remember quite how this one pans out, and it's still enjoyable for someone who's read the book. Jennifer Lawrence is brilliant. Josh Hutcherson. Is it Hutcherson?
Hutcherson, yeah, I think so.
Josh,
I'll go with that.
The guy who plays Peter.
Yeah.
He's really good. There's a lot more to him. He's not just kind of a bit
wet and I love him
in
so
this
much.
one. He's got more of a personality, but it's still, I mean, it's kind of as if he's, I don't know, I hate to say it, but it's that kind of man up. He's kind of, it's like someone's given him a shake, obviously because of what's happened in the first film.
Yeah.
But he does still have that really interesting character, which is he's a gentle, intelligent guy in quite a manly way. But he's not a character who parades around like I'm the good looking one, even though he is, and there is that within the film. Some of the guy playing Finnick is really good. As I said, I mean, Toby Jones is in it again.
Yeah,
he literally. When you see him, he shrugs on camera, and then you hear his voice at other points to the point where you think, "How much are you paid to do this?
Why is Toby Jones?
This is brilliant." But Philip Seymour Hoffman, of course,
he turns up.
He's taken over from he's Haversby.
Plutarch Heavensby, isn't it?
Something like
That's
that.
the name I remember.
I can't remember the bloody names in this film, but
yeah.
he's the new games maker, and he's a fascinating character. I mean, even Lenny Kravitz seemingly upped his
game,
upped his acting a bit. I think it's really good to see what was a good first film become a much better, more solid second film, and I'm really excited about the next one.
Yeah.
Although, as my brother pointed out on the way home, I've got to wait 2 more years and about 5 more hours to get to the end of this story.
Because they've split it into 2, haven't they?
Oh, yeah.
It's tough.
But they've really set up what happens in the third book. I think they've set up kind of the sister and the way that's going to go. They've set up Peter and Gail and that interesting kind of thing with Katniss kind of in the middle, but still kind of saying, I haven't got time for this.
Yeah, it is.
Which is yeah. Because she's not quite the bit of a bitch she was in the first film, but she makes a fascinating, tough character.
Well, what you just alluded,
someone who's very interesting.
And what you just alluded to me, is one of the best bits about the book. It never panders to that. It's never Romeo and Juliet. It's never a threesome in the kind of general sense of the word. It's always pushing and pulling away from it and trying to not be that. And it's just the circumstances, the external pressures, kind of pressing on them to be like that. And so obviously, if you've read the books, you know where it ends up. And it's to a lot of people, it was unsatisfactorily ended. But for me, the actual wrapping up and how it all wrapped up was brilliantly satisfying for me. So I look forward to how they do eventually kind of realise that. But so it's a good one then.
I don't think I've been quite as pleased with a second part since I saw The Two Towers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these films, they're not Oscar-winning films, but they're complete, and especially after watching Ender's Game, this is solid kind of sci-fi genre filmmaking. It's got that kind of really interesting kind of story with hints back to sort of the classics and the Greek tales and all that kind of stuff. This is what I really like about mainstream American cinema, is as much as people kick it because Transformers and
unoriginality
so on,
and all that stuff.
It does come up with these films. It does put the money and surprisingly the patience into these movies that are essentially being made because teenagers will go and see it. But they've made a really good film. It's not dumbed down. It's a fascinating film. But we're going to go on now to something entirely different.
Completely different.
Something we didn't get to see at the cinema over here.
Yep.
Only God Forgives. Now, my Blu-ray arrived today, so I haven't watched this yet. I was a big fan of Drive.
Yep.
It's Gosling.
It is.
Wending Refn.
It is. They're back.
What is Only God Forgives?
He got the team back together. So Only God Forgives focuses on Ryan Gosling, who plays a character called Julian, who basically lives with his brother in Thailand, and they own like a boxing club, like a Muay Thai boxing club, which is basically a front for drugs. They're drug dealers. They sell drugs basically. Due to the fact that his brother's a bit horrible and nasty, he ends up murdering a young prostitute. And then which is delightful opening kind of 10 minutes. And he is then in return revenged upon for that and his brother's murder. It's difficult. I say without giving too much away. The plot is extremely simple. And I know I said to you earlier, I've never seen such economy of storytelling in a film before. Like there's zero exposition. There are just some conversations where some people might say two sentences to each other, and that's how the film gets by.
Right. Okay.
And if you think Ryan Gosling didn't say much in Drive, then you will see him say even less in this film. And so his when he doesn't, in his mother's eyes, who turns up, deal with the problem, as in kill the person that murdered his brother, and for whatever reason, his mother turns up, played fantastically by Kristen Scott Thomas. Who kind of flies in with bleached blonde hair, fake suntan, leopard print clothes and a cheap Californian accent to try and set things right. And so she kind of comes in stamping her feet around. And basically they all fall foul of a Thai policeman who may or may not be slightly supernatural, depending on your take of kind of where you think he gets his sword from. And some other things. Characters will also spontaneously perform karaoke numbers, which will be nice. And if you enjoy Thai karaoke, that'll be good. It's one of those films, like I say, very much like Drive, but I think Drive is the much more commercial of the two. I think Drive's probably the most commercial thing Refn's done.
Right. Okay.
And what I mean is there's so much more. It's not necessarily silence, but there's so much more just sitting and watching in this film. That it's although it's only 83, 84 minutes long, but it's got a lot of time to just breathe. And what Refn does, he just shows you things and just shows you images, and it is a beautiful, beautiful film. The lighting in it is phenomenal. Kind of every scene is kind of nearly neon, and it's only until kind of the end when you go a bit more kind of out during the daytime, which has its reasons kind of within the story. I think what Refn really likes to do is just make beautiful things ugly. He takes. He does seem to revel in it. I haven't seen Gosling look better ever than in this film. He's like a young Marlon Brando. Yeah. He's a beautiful, beautiful man.
I was going to say, he's not an ugly chap.
Not at all. And in this film, he had opened and I was like, hello. And I'm married with a child on the way. And then, Refn takes real glee in kicking the shit out of himself, basically.
Right.
There's a great fight in the middle that doesn't go how you'd expect it to go. Well, I'm not sure if Gosling lands a punch, but and then obviously kind of, although not in the same way in terms of the violence, you take Kristen Scott Thomas, who is, one of our greatest exports, actress-wise, known for speaking fluent French and doing films in French and silver spoon kind of English. Like I said, she turns up with this crass American super bitch. Some of the things that come things that come out of her mouth will make you gasp because
I don't watch this with my mum.
No, she. Well, it depends on how you feel about the phrase "cum dumpster."
Okay.
But it might not be one to have to explain to your mum. And so that happens as well. And like I say, the whole film has that air of just, it's not nastiness, it's just debased morality. They're all, none of them are particularly great characters. But it's funny, in a way, I know we've criticised films in the past for who do you root for if they're all horrible, and there is a way out for Gosling in this film. I say if you watch it, he does have a certain kind of redemptive arc, but not in the kind of traditional sense to it.
But you've got to do. But this is the thing, isn't it? It's with everything in film. Like, who do you root for if they're all horrible?
Yep.
What do you focus on if everything's CG?
Yeah.
You've got to do something with it.
Exactly.
It's got to have some purpose, and I'm guessing this one does.
Yeah, for sure. What I found interesting was there's, you watch Drive, and I remember us talking about kind of how Refn kind of fetishized the driving gloves and hands, and he does the very same thing in this. There are some real lingering shots of fists and Ryan Gosling flexing his hands and doing things. That makes kind of how it ends even more, all the more interesting in a way, because there's definitely a through line between the two films of kind of how that's dealt with. It's not as violent as I'd been led to believe. Don't get me wrong, it is. I think it's an 18. Yeah, it's definitely an 18.
Yeah.
And there is some relatively kind of savage stuff. But if you've seen Drive and sat through that, or Old Boy or anything like that, there's nothing to make you not need to watch this at all. So I wouldn't be scared away by that. I know there was a lot of kind of pre-release talk, and it was kind of 50 booed and cheered in Cannes and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't let that walk away. And I never really felt it was gratuitous, although there are some kind of light torture-y kind of stuff, as there is in Drive, really more like when one person's beating someone else up or getting information out. It never kind of took it kind of that far. And I would liken it more, like I said, with Drive being more commercial, this one felt more like Valhalla Rising than Drive did, because it's that much
Valhalla
more.
Rising.
It's.
And the great thing about Valhalla Rising, sorry to stay about it, is that you can pick it up for a threepence at a car boot, because it was sold in Sainsbury's, and we recovered that and said, this is like 300.
Which is nuts.
It's bloody not.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so it would make kind of a great kind of pairing with that. It's really good. And it's 86 minutes long, and so
perfect.
Yeah, it is. So I think you can, if Refn understands that if you're going to do this kind of film, it can't be 3 hours, because people will not sit through it. They won't. But this one is just it's short and sharp enough to be interesting and keep the momentum, but yet still allows itself to have that. It's not whimsical. That's the wrong word. But have that just strength in silence and just letting itself play out. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Not one to watch with your mum, unless your mum's pretty hardcore, which is possible. Isn't it? Yeah, so I'd say firmly recommend that one.
Okay, so we got one more film to get to, but before that, obviously a couple of days ago we had very sad news that Paul Walker died.
We did.
I just wanted to mention this because Paul Walker, he's quite an interesting chap, I think. In the newspaper reports, I think it was in the Mail, the line went something like, didn't have much impact outside of the Fast and Furious series. And my first thought was, well, I might not like him, but that's enough, because they're bloody
billion-dollar franchise.
Cinemas open.
Yeah.
They've been funny. But he's one of those guys who there was Joyride, otherwise known as Roadkill, Life and Death of Bobby Z, and the amazing Running Scared. He's just one of these guys who's been pottering along, and he does the Fast and Furious. But behind that, he's been doing a stream of these little, kind of what you call just a little, I suppose, modern B movies that are cracking, that are absolutely cracking. I think it's just really sad. I just wanted to mention it because I think it's just really sad news because he's he's not doing Shakespeare in time, but he's a genuinely nice and likeable screen presence. I think he's going to be missed, especially within a certain
for sure
market.
I think you're right. I think nearly everyone must have seen one of the films. Everyone must have seen one Fast and Furious over the last 10, 15 years.
Too, you've seen one.
Well, for sure. I went to the cinema to see a couple of them just because they were just damn crazy out, ludicrous fun, you know. And like you said, he never maybe hit any kind of heights, but the fact that he's been around for this long means he might have gone on to do it. And like you say, it's always obviously a shame. Obviously, people talking about the guy that he kind of that was driving as well, which is obviously just as much of a shame.
Yeah, no, just wanted to divert for a second there, but now we're going to Japan.
We are
with the Wolverine now. Hugh Jackman is back. He is the Wolverine. The film starts. We find him solitary in the wood, living in the woods somewhere. He then gets pulled back to visit an old friend, following what I think is one of the better opening scenes I've seen in one of these films.
Yep.
We're in a Japanese internment camp
sometime around 1944-ish.
Yeah,
like that, I think
somewhere around an area called Nagasaki.
Yeah, something happened there.
Our hero is in solitary confinement down a hole.
Yeah.
What did you make of Wolverine? I think I'm going to put this one out there. I think it's a better film than any of the previous X-Men films.
No, see, that's not true at all.
It's a more interesting
come
film,
on now. No. Now, Wolverine... No. Wolverine's fine. It came out to much hype because it was supposed to be the fanboys version of the story that you want to see, with it being set in Japan and with the samurai crossover, and obviously, the first one they did is not good. What was it even called? Wolverine.
Oh, X-Men Origins.
Yeah, Wolverine.
That had that great opening scene of him running through time.
Again, a great opening scene. And I said, and you're right with this one, it's got a great opening scene. I think my problem with it is I have a problem with the character of Wolverine in films by himself, because it will always end up how this one ends up, which is him fighting something massive and not real, because he is invincible. And they take that away from him during this film, and so there's supposed to be a bit more peril. But Wolverine for me is at his best when he's in with a group of other people that could die, and that's where his peril has to come from. Other people could die because of me, or I need to save other people, or whatever. And with this story, like I say, it's just look, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, it's a spoiler. When a big silver samurai robot turns up at the end, I did think Iron Man first of all, because it's very much like Iron Man, and it didn't have Jeff Bridges in it, so it's instantly not as good. But at the same time, there was some really nice imagery in it that I liked a lot. There were some great scenes, and I liked how they seemed to they got the comedy tone right. I thought he was very. Hugh Jackman's never less than excellent in most things that he does. I can't think of a Swordfish is great. Going back, he's great in Les Mis. The guy's a proper old-fashioned movie star. He can do everything.
I think so.
And so I've got no problem with him, but I would still probably have seen Darren Aronofsky's version of it, which might have been more interesting. Because I think there's a lot to be had with just the simple imagery of Wolverine as a samurai or as a Ronin or as a Shogun or whatever you want to say, and I don't think that was given enough. There were all those elements. There were ninjas. There was that. There was this. There was that. But none of it was relatable as much to him as I kind of wanted it to be. Because I think he is that character. He is that lone warrior, going through time and kind of doing all that. So I didn't hate it. It was it's quite long.
Yes,
it's well over 2 hours.
It's a good half hour too long.
Yeah, which is a shame. And like I say, there were some really good aspects to it, and it was much better than the first one. But I don't think you can say it's better than any of the other X-Men films.
I think it is.
You're crazy.
I don't think it's a great film. By the way, I've rewatched a couple of the X-Men films recently.
Yep.
I just don't find they stand up as being that interesting. Because they either... I mean, the good thing about the X-Men films are they had Bryan Singer, and they really did go for this whole kind of gay rights sort of issue.
Yep.
Which I think was a fascinating way of sort of getting into it, and it worked. It works really well. But it did it without going, do you see? Do you see? You know, so it was just fair, and it was an interesting, you know, and I suppose that's the parallel you draw from. But this, I just kind of think they're a bit too much kind of, you know, X-Men 2 I think is supposed to be the best one.
It's supposed to be, yeah.
But it's Juggernaut, and Vinnie Jones is in it, stinking it up.
Isn't he in the third one?
Is he? Is it the third one?
I think that's the third one.
Yeah, well, you see, the
third one is the worst one.
The first one's not interesting enough.
Right.
The second one, what's his name's in it?
Alan Cumming.
And he's brilliant.
He is.
He's great.
Yeah.
But his character should have just ignored all the others and been about his character. And Brian Cox turns up, and you kind of go, okay, well, 45 minutes in, here's Brian Cox. I know exactly what's happening now. The third one is that's the one with Vinnie Jones.
That's the one with Vinnie Jones.
And there's that nice bit with the wings, but the rest of it,
right? Yeah.
I mean, the Beast is.
But
just
the third one had
stupid.
problems. That's the problem. Yeah, the third one did have issues, didn't it? It ended up in the hands of Brett Ratner, which says a lot for it.
And you know, Wolverine is an awful film in which they retell the 5 minutes of flashback from X-Men 2 at great length, and then
throw Ryan Reynolds in as Deadpool in the last 10 minutes to try and regain some credibility with the fans.
I think this film feels most like the kind of comics that I like to read. The kind of, I mean, and I'm not an X-Men. I haven't read any X-Men at all, but this feels more like the type of comic book movie that I enjoy. It's a touch more sort of restrained, but it's still got a really good sense of humour. I think Hugh Jackman, he's a fantastic actor because he's very physical, but he looks like someone you'd have to... He's a bit like John Hamm. He looks like someone who's been drawn.
Yeah.
Because he is just
rugged.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it went on a bit. I mean, it could have really done with... I mean, it could have done with more on the friendship before the...
Yeah.
What happened, you know, before what happens at the end.
Yeah.
And that would have made it more sort of dramatically satisfying. But like I say, I think there's some really good images. I quite enjoyed there's some business on a train that was quite good. I found some business at a funeral that was quite good, some business with some arrows. There's a lot of good
business.
That's a whole lot of good business.
Some good business with some arrows, yeah.
But it does have an extra half hour in which you kind of go, oh, really?
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. But does that then mean, how do then you feel about the new one that's coming out?
Is there another one?
The new X-Men that's coming out. How do you feel about that one?
What, Days of Future Past?
Yeah.
Well, I thought X-Men First Class was just awful.
Right.
The single greatest bit in X-Men... Well, there were two great bits in X-Men First Class. There was the bit when Magneto's jollies around Argentina. That was really interesting. And then there was the bit where Wolverine tells him to fuck off.
Right, yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Well, literally.
Yeah.
And the rest of the film was just like,
so you're not,
why are you doing this?
So you can't
I don't understand what the story is.
Okay.
Because we know what the story is already. We know what their friendship is from the first film. So please spell it out for us.
End. Okay.
I don't know.
It does have Peter Dinklage in it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. Oh. So, I mean, that's got to be.
This is the problem. I'm going to go. It's like The Hobbit's on the horizon. I'm going to go and watch it. But But
now you want to talk about that, do you?
Just quickly.
We've got about 30 seconds.
Okay, you've rewatched it.
I rewatched it on Sunday.
Better?
I think so.
I'm going to have to rewatch it now.
At the cinema, I had no problem with it. I watched it, but I was like you. It was vanilla. It was like, great, okay. It's like going to see... Yeah, it's like watching...
I did the check in my watch.
Yeah. Do you know what? I didn't do that on Sunday at all. Yeah? I sat there and I watched it. And actually, do you know what? There were a few times when I picked up my phone to read an email or something, and I actually kind of, oh no, I'm watching the film. I'm going to watch it. So I enjoyed it a lot more the second time round, and I felt there was a lot more room to breathe. And obviously, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of names, and I remember in the cinema feeling a bit kind of overwhelmed by all of that stuff that was going on.
All the false noses.
All the crazy hair and the kind of dwarf action. But no, I would recommend giving it a second. I mean, I watched it because, like you, I knew that no matter how I felt about the first one, I'm still going to go and watch the second one. So I thought I might as well have a grasp of what's going on. And it's still got the same problems in terms of, the additions of this white orc that they kind of made up as a bit of, as a bad character and and all this stuff. But no, I did. I enjoyed it a lot more. I think mainly because when I first saw it, I felt there were a lot of surprises I wasn't expecting. Radagast the Brown was crazy, and he was on his bunny sled. But I actually thought that was quite endearing because he's actually, he saves a hedgehog, I love hedgehogs, and he saves a hedgehog, which is great. So I would recommend watching it again. It was good. So you should you probably won't change your mind. I don't know, but I somewhat.
I'm a big believer in watching a film again.
It is. I somewhat thought, and I did. I thought, you know what? It's not just that kind of slight knockoff of the Lord of the Rings films that I maybe kind of thought it is. And I said Martin Freeman's performance was much better. And that scene, I remember watching it at the cinema and thinking that scene in the lake and under the mountain was quite a special scene when with the riddles in the dark. And that is a brilliantly conceived and well written scene. And so I would recommend watching it again.
And next time, to wrap things up, I should think we'll be reviewing Desolation of Smoke.
We might be.
Because
it'll be 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks' time,
so it should be out. We should be catching that.
So it'll be Hobbit 2.
Yeah, Hobbit 2.
And
The Revenge.
Best of the year.
Best of the year, top 5 films. Hopefully we'll have Claire back from her musical holiday. Wolverine won't be in my top 5. Might be in yours.
No.
Who knows? No. I'm going for, what's the film we watched? Pain and Gain. Pain and Gain, top of the year.
Never saw it.
Did you not watch it? Oh, terrible.
I'm going for This Is the End.
This Is the End.
Which...
I didn't enjoy that as much as I'd hoped, to be honest with you. We're rabbiting on.
Yeah, time to go.
As always, go on to our Facebook page and like us or tweet us at Sarnia Cinema, or just send us an email or give one of us a call. We'll have a chat. It's not a big deal.
We're in the phone book.
Yeah, we're in the phone book. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.